Hello, welcome to another special edition of Film Club, and today we're going to be talking about Justice League. As you can see, I'm wearing my Justice League shirt. I just saw Justice League over this past weekend, and I'm going to start this off before we really dive into the movie. I'm going to say firstly and foremost that I'm giving this movie 2 thumbs way up. It should come as no surprise. You know, I am kind of a fanboy biased towards DC Comics. I am an apologist for Batman v Superman. I loved Wonder Woman to death. I still think Wonder Woman is the stronger movie, but both of these movies are really, really good. I even didn't honestly hate Suicide Squad, although I don't think it's a particularly great movie either. But this is such a dramatic tonal shift that makes everything this much more worth it. So, anyways, now that that's out of the way, we're going to jump into the movie. I'm going to spoil the hell out of this movie, and there's kind of no other way to really get around it. But without me talking to you in great detail about how good Justice League is, so this whole thing's going to be spoilerific. But if you guys wanted to know, 2 thumbs way up, you should go see it. And if you listened to the critics and looked at the 39% of Rotten Tomatoes, shame on you. They're wrong. They're very, very wrong. Anyways, let's go ahead and start out with the few negative aspects of this movie, and then I'll talk about the positives. The biggest negative aspect about Justice League is its villain. Its villain is bad. And it's not that Steppenwolf is necessarily a bad villain. He is poorly written in this movie, and he is literally there just as a means to fill the story plot device of the world is ending and we need to fix that. And that's the main problem with him. He's not a particularly bad villain. He's actually a very interesting villain. He's in this universe, he is the nephew of Darkseid, and I appreciate that they even name drop Darkseid in this movie at least once, and I thought that was really cool. So we're kind of alluding to where this storyline with the bigger Justice League picture could go, and that was really awesome. But unfortunately, he is just incredibly generic. He's your typical CGI movie villain. He walks around spouting off just about every single cliche villain movie line you've heard for the past 30 years in cinema, and he's just not very interesting. And that is the main weak link in this entire movie, is its villain. And if it wasn't for the characters and the actors portraying them being so freaking phenomenal, this movie would tank really, really bad. Thankfully, the performances done by just about everyone else in this movie are so incredibly good that it overshadows the biggest negative aspect of the movie. So, and that's going to be the strongest point I have to say about this movie. Everyone else is incredible. Ben Affleck, I shitted on him before Batman v Superman came out, and he's actually the best part of Batman v Superman, and he's given me a Batman that I didn't know I wanted out of these movies, especially after the excellent Nolan trilogy. You know, I didn't think anybody else could do Batman better than Bale or Keaton, and then Ben Affleck came along and, you know, changed all my opinions on everything about that movie. So I freaking loved his performance in Batman v Superman, but I loved it here even more. And I'll tell you why. And the reason why is in Batman v Superman, Ben Affleck Batman was very much Dark Knight Returns Batman. He was, you know, the dark, brooding, I'm angry at everyone, the world is against me Batman. In this movie, Ben Affleck Batman is literally animated series Batman. He's having fun, but he's also still, you know, kind of dark and brooding at times. Not in a Batman v Superman sense, but in a typical comic book sense. This film opens up with Batman, which I think is one of the strongest aspects of the movie, but again, I'm a Batman fan, I'm incredibly biased. However, it gave me some of the most clearest depiction of Gotham in this universe that we haven't really seen yet. Yes, Gotham City is portrayed in Batman v Superman, but I thought it was more realistic, and here in the couple scenes we got in Gotham, it felt more like a comic book than it did an actual realistic place, and I appreciated that aspect of it very, very much. He's excellent, and his scene time as both Batman and Bruce Wayne are just excellent. He nails it so perfectly, and I'm watching it, I forget he's Ben Affleck. Like, that's how good he is in this role. He just looks like Bruce Wayne Batman to me, and that's all you can ask for, especially when it comes to someone as recognizable as Ben Affleck. So he's phenomenal. Nothing more really needs to be said about him. Obviously, Gal Gadot is in this movie. She's playing Wonder Woman once again, reprising her role from the great, great summer blockbuster that I still think is a better movie than this, but she's great. She brought this kind of light to this universe that jump-started it in a way that it really needed, because Batman v Superman was pretty critically panned, and I will argue it's a good movie. It's not a great movie. Suicide Squad was kind of a huge misfire for a lot of people, and this whole cinematic universe needed a kickstart. Now, I will always go back and say I loved Man of Steel, and people like to forget about Man of Steel, but that was the first one in this whole thing. I love that movie. I thought it was the best Superman movie since Superman 2, but that wasn't really hard to do. There are things that people hated about that movie, and they kind of rectified one of the biggest problems with that movie in Batman v Superman. But the biggest problem that Man of Steel and Batman v Superman had was this depiction of Superman. And I will tell you right now, the depiction of Superman in this movie is the depiction of Superman that I have wanted for this film franchise this entire time. Now, in Man of Steel, I gave it a pass because he's learning how to get his powers. This is Superman 1.0 again, you know. We're going through the story of here's who he is, here's where he came from, you know, here's how he was raised and everything. And that was fine. If you want to do that one time in the first movie, that's fine. What I didn't like about it was when we got to Batman v Superman, he was wishy-washy again. He's running around, should I be saving people, you know, and that kind of shit, and I hated that. And here, you know, spoilers, they resurrect him. He comes back, he saves the day, but when he comes back after, you know, your initial 5-minute scene of he has no idea where he is and everything, and then they kind of, you know, use Lois Lane to calm him down, he's Superman again. He shows up, he saves the day at the end of this movie, he's smiling, which is the most important thing out of Superman, is I want to see Superman smile because that's how he is. And also, he's cracking jokes and he's having a good time. The most important thing in this movie to me, and this is how I think they got him so pitch perfect compared to the other movies in this cinematic universe, is there is a scene, the first scene where he shows up at the end, big climactic battle of this film. He shows up and Batman had sent Flash to go save some civilians that were leaving this big, huge fight scene. And Superman, you know, shows up, whatever, punches Steppenwolf a couple times, and then he hears through his supersonic hearing, oh shit, there's civilians by, I need to go save them. That right there shows me the Superman that I wanted to see. This is a Superman that cares about civilians first, you know, the people of the world. He puts everything in front of himself. That's what Superman is. And just showing me that here, instead of the, oh, I don't know what I should do, was a humongous tonal change for that character in a way that I didn't think was possible for this cinematic universe. And it's awesome when he shows up. He kicks ass. He kicks serious ass. Before we go on more with the core three, or the Trinity as we'll call them, of, you know, Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, let's talk about the other three characters in this movie that this is your first experience with them. It's important to note that other than very, very, very brief footage we saw in Batman v Superman, there were no origin movies for Aquaman. There was not an origin movie for Flash or Cyborg. I walked into this movie thinking, I'm not going to give a shit about Cyborg. I've never really cared about him as a character. He was actually one of the more interesting characters in the movie. And one thing that's important to note in this movie is Warner Brothers demanded that it be 2 hours long. And it works. Like, I went in this movie like, oh, they cut this thing 2 hours. You know, you heard all these horror stories in the last couple of weeks of like, just, I don't see any way that this thing's going to work. It is amazing. As much of a hack job as this film seems like it was, how well it turned out in the end, how good it is at the end. But one of the biggest strengths I'll say in this movie, besides the characters, is the fact that I walked out of this movie knowing exactly who each character was, where they came from, and feeling like their three stories mattered, considering I didn't get film interpretations of these to go on ahead of time like we did in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Aquaman is awesome. Jason Momoa, again, fantastic, perfect casting choice for Aquaman. He's funny, he's badass, and he's exactly what I want Aquaman to be. Ray Fisher is Cyborg. Again, I walked in this movie not thinking I liked Cyborg at all. He was a really cool and interesting character, and I always thought his CG looked bad, but when you put him up against Steppenwolf, who is arguably one of the ugliest and most awful looking CG villains in a movie in the last 10 years, he looks pretty good. And then let's talk about finally Ezra Miller's Flash. Now, this was the one of these three new characters that I was the most skeptical about, because the CW already has an excellent Flash show that has given fans a whole new window into the world of who the Flash is, where he came from, and why he's such an incredible character. And so when they announced this cinematic universe, I thought, oh cool, they'll just, you know, do a Marvel and pluck that actor and throw him in the Justice League. And they didn't. They cast a different person as him. And Ezra Miller knocks it out of the park. I'm not really familiar with this guy's work. Probably the same with Ray Fisher, honestly. But Ezra Miller, I'm not familiar with his work at all. He's freaking phenomenal as the Flash in his own right. I still am kind of partial to the television show Flash, but here he works. He pretty much is just kind of the movie version of Quicksilver from Marvel. He's kind of the same thing here, if that makes sense to you. He, you know, he's the comedic relief. He's funny. I feel like every scene he's in is actually humorous. He brings a lot of the lightheartedness to this whole story, and he has a childlike wonder of being a part of the Justice League that makes this whole experience even more fun to watch. So he really fit the role well, and he nailed it, especially when you have to stack this against that incredible Flash TV show that I need to catch up on, but that's another story. Overall, these core 6 people in this group are fantastic, and they make this movie so worth it. And it's just so good from beginning to end. I loved every minute of it. I didn't think a scene was wasted, and I enjoyed it from beginning to end, and I had fun, and that's what I wanted from a DC movie, to have fun, but also see the characters I love, especially Batman, and it just was so freaking good. I loved every minute of it. I do not understand the critical reception of it. I don't get it. Like, I seriously, after I walked out of the movie, I just thought to myself, like, did half these critics have a pulse when they saw this thing? Like, I don't understand the Marvel argument for everything, where it's like, well, they changed this movie from being whatever it was going to be into a more Marvel-like movie where it's fun, enjoyable, and everybody can have a good time, and the critics still hated it. And I just, you know, now the other thing that, I don't mean for this review to get ranty, but, you know, I looked today and we're calling this dismal because it made $96 million. We live in a time where $96 million at the box office is now considered dismal for a superhero movie. And now I see all these articles popping up, what's the future for the DC Cinematic Universe and all this stuff. Like, it's fine. This movie was still going to make a shit ton of money overseas. People are still going to go see it, and it's still going to do well. There's also the Blu-ray 4K, you know, home release that'll come out. People are going to buy it and see it then. It's going to be fine. They're still going to keep making these movies. This isn't over. This isn't a bomb. You know, I'll use another example. The Mummy. The Mummy just came out in theaters over the summer, and I think it's Warner Brothers. Or no. It's Universal. Had this huge plan to start what they called the Dark Cinematic Universe, which was they were going to take all the old Universal monster movies and give them their own cinematic universe. That includes Dracula, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein, Wolfman, The Mummy, and Invisible Man. And if I'm forgetting, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, obviously, but if I'm forgetting anyone else, you can, you know, blast me in the comments. But The Mummy was such a freaking disaster that that whole thing is canceled now. But the difference between The Mummy 2017 here and this movie is that this movie made $96 million and people still went to it. And if you look at the cinematic score for it on Rotten Tomatoes, 39% of critics, you know, were mixed on it, whatever. But if you look at the audience one, it's at like an 85%. Like, the people that went and saw this movie pretty much loved it. So this isn't going anywhere. You know, and there's all these rumors about, is Ben Affleck going to leave? You know, now there's rumors that Jake Gyllenhaal is going to take over as Batman, which I don't actually think is the worst idea either. But again, we went through this 6 months ago, and Ben Affleck came out and said, no, I'm not going anywhere. And I feel like it's going to be the same way here, where he's going to come out and say, no, I'm not going anywhere. I think we're still going to get a Ben Affleck Batman movie with him facing off against Deathstroke, which we'll get to in a minute. I think everything's fine. I wouldn't worry so much about the cinematic universe of DC. This was such a huge course correction between Wonder Woman and this that I think they are on the perfect path, the best path that they could be on with this franchise. Other things I want to talk about really briefly in Justice League. One thing I absolutely loved in this movie is they got Danny Elfman to do the music. I thought the music was fine. I didn't think it was particularly like anything that really stood out to me. I thought it was very serviceable for what this movie was. However, his idea of reusing his '89 Batman theme for Batman was a freaking phenomenal choice, and it was awesome again for me, being the kid who grew up, you know, 3, 4, 5 years old, watching and rewatching '89 Batman to the point that the tape wore out and my parents had to buy another copy of it. You know, hearing that iconic music again in a new Batman movie was incredible to me, and I loved every minute of it. It's not it doesn't really go so incredible, like loud with that part of it, but it's just subtle enough that it feels right. Apparently they also use Superman's theme in this movie, but I didn't hear that. And the other thing I would say that was negative about it is Wonder Woman had her own pretty badass theme in the Wonder Woman movie and Batman v Superman. They don't use that in this movie at all. That's a little weird. I mean, at the end of the day, the last thing I'll talk about here, and then we'll wrap this video review up, is there are two incredible post-credit scenes. Now, I'm going to spoil these. If you don't want to hear any more about this, 2 thumbs way up, go see Justice League, and you can see exactly what I'm going to talk about right now. So, spoiler once again. The first post-credit scene is just the fun that you wanted to see. The Flash and Superman race to see who's the faster person. And I love it because they didn't show you who's faster, because that's always been the argument among comic book nerds, is who's faster. And they're just having fun. They're smiling, they're making jokes at each other. I loved everything about it. The big post-credit scene when all the credits are done, yes, it involves Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. He's still terrible. He is still horribly miscast, and they need to recast Lex Luthor before they do any more with this film franchise. But that's me. I think he's just a one-dimensional actor. He doesn't make any sense as Lex Luthor. However, they put Deathstroke here. Now, if you remember a year ago, the rumors about the solo Batman movie was going to be Deathstroke was the villain. Well, Zack Snyder and Warner Brothers and company, they tricked everybody. No, Deathstroke's probably coming to the Justice League, and they are going to set up the Legion of Doom or the Injustice League, whatever you want to choose. This is awesome. And it was not only awesome to see Deathstroke on a movie screen. You know, we've gotten him very well done on the Arrow TV show, but to see him on a movie screen is completely different. And the fact that he took his helmet off, we got to see whatever, I can't think of that guy's name, I'll throw it up on the screen here, to actually see him playing Deathstroke was freaking awesome. Really well done, excellent casting on their part. I loved that they are going to set this up for something else. I hope we get that. So, at the end of the day, Justice League, wow, what an incredible experience it was. I loved every minute of it. I don't understand the hate that it's getting. I don't understand why people are put down by it. I loved it. Go out, support it, go see it. Go see it again. Go see it 3 times. I don't care, man. Go see Justice League. Don't listen to the critical reception of it. It's great. It's awesome. Everyone's having fun in it, and you're going to have fun in it too. Anyways, guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.